Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Herman. Take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction, Lee.
No problem.
So, welcome again to this part one. As I say, part one of an 8-part series. And what's this about? I mean, I think everybody that's ever read a standard will know that the standards are normally not the easiest document to read and to understand. Now, the intention of this whole 8-part series is to try and simplify, to help you understand the standard, so that when you read it and follow the standard, it's much easier to read, understand, and follow, know what is in the standard. So again, we just thank ETech for making this possible. And then some house rules from my side, very simple. At the end of this presentation, there will be time for questions, but at any stage in between, please feel free to ask any questions, to forward it so that we can address it on the spot. And then relax. Let's see how much we can learn in this session. A quick overview of what we're going to do today. Let me just get my laser pointer going here. Okay, this presentation will handle what is a standard and a code of practice. We will have a look at the importance of the Consumer Protection Act. We'll discuss some industry bodies. We discuss standards pertaining to hot water heat installations. I'll give you a brief overview of SANS 10254. I assume you all understand and is aware of the standard. And then we have a quick conclusion. But let's be real. I mean, that's nice. Nice to use fancy words to describe what we're going to do. If you walk away from this, what do we really want you to know? What do we want to achieve? We really want the value of a standard. We want you to understand what the real value of the standard is, why you really want to comply with it, and how this is applicable specifically to geyser installations. So the first question, what is a standard? And I think at this point, Lee, can you bring up the poll, please? Let's ask the question, what is the purpose of a standard? There's 3 choices for you. Something to rate the quality level of a product or installation. Secondly, is it a set of minimum requirements for a product or a standard? Or to keep the competition out?
There we go, Herman. The guys are voting now. Yeah.
Busy voting.
Yep. We've got 33% people voting. You know, choose which way you think is best, you know. I mean, there's no right, you know, well, there is a right answer, but we're not trying to catch you out here. We're just trying to get some understanding if you know what it's about.
Does a standard mean we're rating products? My product is better than yours. If that's how you perceive a standard, then select option 1. Option 2 says, well, this is the bare minimum. And then option 3, is this really intent to keep everything in South Africa, keep the competition out? So what's your view on this? Would be quite interesting to see.
Okay, I'm going to stop the poll now. We got 83% people have voted. All right.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. I've stopped it, and these are the results. The audience can see the results. They're coming through now. There we go.
Ooh, interesting. I can't see the results. Okay. Can you tell me what the percentages are?
Yeah, your result will be on your attendees view. That little screen at the top. But anyway, something to rate the quality level of a product or installation. 19% people answered that. To set the minimum requirements for production and installation, we had the bulk of our audience say 81%, and I'm glad to see nobody said to keep the competition out.
Okay, that's good to hear. So
your job is
80%.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can go now. Okay, now I'm glad to see that at least 80% of the people understand that the standard is exactly that, a set of minimum requirements for a product to comply with. It's also important to understand that it's not just for products. I mean, we used to products. We know that needs to comply with the standards on, but it goes further than that. I mean, installation. The standard for installation talks to processes, actions, how you do that, and exactly the same happens there. It gives you the minimum requirements for any standard. What's very important to understand is what is the pass rate to comply with the standard. There's no pass rate as like our schools lately, 40% pass rate and you'll be there. It is 100%. It means that if there's 99 requirements in the standard and you complied with everything except one little clause, it means you failed to comply with the standard. It will go through as a failure, as a non-compliance completely. So the one question people often ask is why does standards exist? I mean, we know what the standard is, but why? And one of the key answers is because a standard ensures that things work. If you think for a moment, I mean, we use quite used to that. I buy a nut, I buy a bolt, and I know it will fit. It works. And that is because there's standards to ensure that it fits. Similarly, in the plumbing environment, pipe sizes, for instance. Imagine every company deciding their own sizes. How are we going to make sure that the interconnection between everything is functional? How do I make sure that when I work on an old system, that my pipework will fit the old system, for instance? And again, the same apply to installations. Does the installation work? It makes sure that the components used today will work with the components used previously, that the manner in which it connects, make sure that the rest of the components will work and the system will work in total. There's a second very important reason why standards exist, because standards cover your blind spot. Now, what do I mean by that? I think we're all familiar with the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. So how does that come into the picture? It's a standard, or any product, for instance, addresses a number of aspects. I mean, part of my history, I did product development, and there's often a lot of aspects that go into a product. There's mechanical, electrical, flow dynamics, thermodynamics, aesthetics to think of, ergonomics, safety, medical, a lot of things to think of, and you very seldom get one person that's an expert in all of that. It's very easy for somebody with a mechanical background like me to focus on the mechanical challenge and completely forget about some safety aspects, some medical aspects that you haven't even known. But if you do follow the standard will guide you to these important aspects to make sure that you don't forget that by accident. I've seen some gas products, for instance, that were brought into the country. It's worked in the country of origin where it was manufactured. It's good quality products, but it wasn't tuned specifically for the gas and the gas pressures used in South Africa, and it became dangerous components. And exactly the same is applied in the plumbing environment, in installations of plumbing. For instance, a solar water heater. I think this is also something that quite a few people are aware of. It's one thing to have a solar water heater that works, that complies with the standard. But if this is installed on let's say a low-cost housing with a weak roof, can the roof carry that system? If you don't follow the standard that guides you, that makes sure that you have a strong enough roof, you can cause serious damage and injury to people. And a similar example often leads to balanced pressure. It's not only about the components used, it's how the components are integrated. Balanced pressure is often, or in many cases, not really addressed or addressed accurately. I mean, if you've ever been in a shower where you try to set the temperature just right, and just touching the tap suddenly switches it from ice cold to scalding hot water. I mean, that's all purely because of the installation, because typically the balance pressure or it were unbalanced pressure that caused something like that. And again, following the standard prevents situations like that. Now you can ask the question, what is in the standard? You see the nice round wheel there with the different colors. I mean, if you look at the pie chart, what's the different aspects, type of requirements that goes into a standard? The first thing that's always in there, before I say that, let me go back one step. And also just clarify, please understand that we're not trying to give a technically perfect explanation of exactly what is in the standard and how it works. The intention is to give you a general understanding. A lot of this is just my way of explaining this. If you want all the technical exact details, there's lots of documentation to follow, and we can even put you in contact with that if you want to. So coming back to the practical application, safety. Safety is one of the key things in a standard. Things, if you look at a product like sharp edges, make sure if you use sheet steel that there's no sharp edges that can cut you. Guidelines on making sure that you don't use any toxic elements. Safety pressures and all sorts of things are typically addressed. Compatibility is obviously important. Again, pipe sizes. Does the bolt and the nut matches each other? Will the fitting fit the pipe? Making sure that all of that works. Things in the electrical environment. In South Africa, you know what type of plug to use. What is the European plug? Making sure that the right plug and the right supply demand will be used. User information. Also something that is easily overlooked. But if you don't instruct the user, explain to him what he needs to know about the product, he might abuse the product without even knowing that, or he might try to use it and the product doesn't work just because he didn't understand that. Even some dangerous situations can occur from time to time if the user doesn't use the product properly or know how to integrate it properly. Then there's functionality. This is the one thing people often think is that's all that goes into a standard. That's only one of the aspects. That is, simply put, can the product do what it's supposed to do? I mean, the tap is designed to keep the water and release it when I want it. Does the tap do that? Does it do it in a controlled manner? If I set the temperature, change the temperature, does it change gradually so that it's a usable product, for instance? And an important aspect also is reasonable abuse. That means we know that people don't always use a product in the way that it was intended. Especially in our plumbing industry, we walk around with big spanners. If there's a leak, what's the first thing you do? Tighten it a bit more. Use a bigger spanner. I think we all know the saying: if the hammer doesn't work, you're not using enough, or you're not using a big enough hammer. So, but using that as in a joking way, what does happen if you try to close a tap? You use a bigger spanner, and the next moment it breaks off. When will it break? When it breaks, will it cause a dangerous situation? Can it allow hot water, scalding hot water, to gush all over a unsuspecting person? That's a typical things that goes into a normal standard. Now, all of this applies equally on a product standard or in an installation standard, like the SANS 10254. I mean, for installations, it looks at the safety of the installation. What do you have to consider there? The functionality. How do you do the installation so that it remains functional? What user information needs to go with this installation so that the homeowner know and understand what to do? Then another point that often comes up is a code of practice. The terminology code of practice is used. It's not used that often anymore because a code of practice is just a different type of standard. But it's essentially a code of practice is the difference between a thing and an action or integration. Where product standard typically refers to things, a code of practice is something like the SANS 10254 that refer to the installation of a product. It can refer to processes. It can even add specific actions that you need, like instructions that needs to be handed to the homeowner. Some standards even explain how there must be a verbal discussion between the homeowner and the installer to make sure that the homeowner is trained and taught on what they need to do. Good. And I'm just checking the time because I see we're going through this quite fast. Okay, the next subject we need to discuss is the Consumer Protection Act. We now have a fair idea of a standard. What's a standard? Why, or some of the value of the standard itself, because it gives you that information that you need as a plumber to do the job right. One of the key issues, the Consumer Protection Act. Let me ask you first. Can you put up your hands? Who of you believes that the Consumer Protection Act affects your business specifically? You raise your hands. And at this point, Lee, I lost that screen. Well, I don't know where to find it. So can you just give me some feedback? Lee, are you there?
Herman, yeah, it's in your attendees panel. And I'd say about 50%, just over 50% of people have raised their hands. A few more now have got aboard. You can see it now. Can you see it?
No.
We're all attended.
I think we. Oh wait, I can open this one and no, let's not address that. We'll get back to that. I don't see that. Okay.
Yeah, right. About 70% of the people said yes. So I think it's important.
Okay.
Well,
good.
Yes.
Okay, so if you can put all your hands down, I'll ask you the next question. Who thinks that they might have contravened the Consumer Protection Act unintentionally? So do you think you might have missed something because you didn't know exactly what it was what? And
Herman,
any answer? Nothing.
Yeah, we got about 7 out of 20.
7 out of 20. That's not too bad. And then the last question: who doesn't really know what is in the Consumer Protection Act? I mean, do you know what's in there? Okay, so let me simplify. Raise your hand if you're not really sure what's in the Consumer Protection Act.
We got 6 out of 20.
6 out of 20. Okay. So again, it sounds like my job is done. I don't have to do too much. But for those 6 people, and the rest can listen as well, let me give you my summarized version of the full Consumer Protection Act. If I can get my screen going, there you go. We talk about Act number 68 of 2008. In essence, a supplier must deliver what he promised, and a consumer can expect that what he buys will work. And just about the whole Act speak to these requirements. essentially says we're no longer allowed, or suppliers are no longer allowed to lie to the consumers, if you want to put it bluntly. I can't advertise one thing and deliver something similar or not quite that. And when I buy a pen, I can expect that the pen will write for a reasonable period of time, not just to the end of the day and then fall apart. That's the essence of the Act. Now, how does that really affect us in the plumbing industry? That's what we're discussing today. Before we get there, let's just look at the consumer for a change. Some of the key requirements in this Act specify that the consumer can assume that all products comply to the applicable national standard. Okay, let's use plain language. What does that mean? For instance, we all know there is a national standard for a toilet flush valve, for instance. So anybody walking into a retail outlet and you buy a toilet flush valve from the shelf, the law says, I can expect this flush valve complies to the national standard. Okay. If the retailer that sells this product wants to sell a product that does not comply, it means that you have to inform the user. It practically means you have to put up a board and say, there's a set of toilet flush valves. These valves at this price complies to the national standard. These valves at this price does not comply to the national standard. You must inform that. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen any notice like that in any retail outlet, which means we can all assume everything complies to the national standard. Similarly,
Herman?
Yes.
Herman?
Yes.
There was quite an interesting question that came in from Steve, and his question is, would a plumbing contractor be considered as a consumer when purchasing products?
That.
So he walks into a plumbing store.
Yes.
And he's buying that valve.
Yeah. That is a interesting question, and to give you this the honest answer, I might need to seek legal opinion on that one. I think if you bear with me a short while longer, let me.
Herman?
Sorry.
Yeah. Wynand said it is a tricky one, but I would agree with Steve. You know, we are, as plumbers, purchasing. You made the statement earlier regarding the board. You know, the signboard that's up there. It says these are non-compliant products, so therefore it applies to us as a plumber as well. We should be walking into a supplier, and that supplier should be displaying non-compliance products and saying that I am now, you know, I'm doing my duty because you are a consumer in my shop as a plumber, so therefore I'm doing my duty for you. That's the way I look at it. Okay, now, in my understanding of the Act, most definitely there's a lot of truth to that and there's a lot of value to that statement, but the story doesn't end there. And that does come in a slide or two. That's why let's talk about this in 2 slides from now. I'll give you some better perspective on that. Okay. Herman, we have a supplier in the audience. I would make an assumption, and he makes a statement. He said that any plumber in his shop is a consumer. So therefore, we're coming straight from the supplier's mouth.
That is correct. That's why I say it's a very valuable argument. However, the story doesn't end there. It goes further, and we get to that. We get to that point in I can't remember how many slides from here, but only a few. Okay, now, sorry, let me just get my train of thought here again. Okay, the last comment I wanted to make, I mean, I think we all understand this principle, but it's important to understand that it doesn't only apply to products, to the product I buy off the shelf, it also applies to a service. When I deliver a service to somebody and there's a standard for that service, the consumer can therefore expect that service complies with whatever national standard exists for that. Like, for instance, on the top of my head, I'd say, what, SANS 10254. Now, if we actually get to this point of the question, let's say, what if a plumber gets hold of this nice low-priced geyser? The only problem is there's no evidence that this geyser complies with the SANS 151. Like we all know, geyser has to comply with that. But the salesman makes a very good pitch. I mean, it really makes sense. He explains how this is a good thing and there won't be any problem. So why not? Buy the product, go to my client, install the geyser, and everybody's happy because it came at a better price. We all made money. Good. But then 6 months later, the geyser burst and there's damaged ceiling. Carpets are normally gone as well. This could have been over the bookcase. Some precious book collection are gone. I don't know, somebody could have got hurt. So the question is, who is responsible? I think exactly the question that came out of the crowd now. Who is responsible? Me as a plumber, can I turn around and say, well, I was the consumer, therefore it's the responsibility of the retailer to pay for the damages? The reality is the Consumer Protection Act does give us an answer on that, and it is. The liability is shared by all. Now, it's very specific that the manufacturer of the product, the distributor, the retailer, the plumber are all equally liable for this, which means that this geyser that I've installed, if there's any problem, if the homeowner comes to me, I am liable. I have to pay up. Yes, from that point onwards, I can take it up with the retailer and say, whoa, in that case, you misled me, and sort it out with the retailer. Similarly, it can follow the whole process chain and can become an interesting legal matter, and all the lawyers will make the money. The reality in this situation is, if you did everything right, if you made sure that the product you installed, the component you installed, was really a compliant product, as the law said, then you have no problem. Then none of this will affect you, and you cannot be held liable for that. So one of the important lessons out of that is, do not assume that something is correct, because it can come back and bite you. You have to make sure that it really is correct and that it really does comply with everything. Now, before I go ahead, can I just quickly go back to the question that was asked? Are you happy with the answer, or with what we've described now? Does that answer your question fully?
I'll let you know if Steve is happy, because it was Steve who asked the question. Okay, so let's move on.
Good. We'll move on. Then the next very important aspect on the legal compliance side, we spoke about the Consumer Protection Act, assuming that compliance to a standard is voluntary. But there is a legislation in South Africa, the Water Services Act, and specifically Government Notice R509, and I'm not going to give all the legal terminologies and so on. But this regulation it's got a very interesting requirement. It states that whenever a plumbing installation is done, it must comply to SANS 10252, which is interesting. That's not what we're discussing today, but 10252 is a legal requirement in terms of this legislation. However, if you now go and read SANS 10252, what does that say? It says that SANS 10254, it makes SANS 10254 a legal requirement, because in SANS, it's something I'll repeat later as well, but remember, we look at a complete system. All the standards, everything referred in SANS 10252 becomes a legal requirement as well. And because SANS 10252 has got a specific requirement that says when you install a geyser in any installation, the installation shall be in line with SANS 10254. Therefore, for all practical reasons, compliance with SANS 10254 is a legal requirement. In turn, SANS 10254 specify that all components used, like a tap, like the geyser, like the valves, must comply with its national standard. Therefore, going all the way back to buying the product from the retailer, it is just an additional important reason to make sure that you know that the product complies and you don't think that it might comply. And again, similar with the installation, that I don't think I'm doing the installation right. I know that I'm doing it 100% to the standard. Okay, with that being said, let's look at some of the industry bodies that is around. Now, I would assume that most of you are familiar with IOPSA and familiar with the PIRB. And I think these two bodies are very practical, useful bodies that were generated in the plumbing industry. On a personal note, I wish more industries would have similar bodies and similar ways to responsibly work within their industries. But what are these bodies about? What is their main functions? And to a great extent, I think both of these bodies have a similar, or they have one goal at mind. It's to promote plumbing installations, or to promote responsible plumbing, to promote legal compliance, to promote compliance in such a way, or installations also in such a way that it's sustainable, healthy, safe, efficient. At the end of the day, to help promote and assist plumbers to be able to do everything efficiently, because that will ensure a good industry, ensure that the industry maintains good standards. The homeowners, the consumers will have good products, and well, I'd like to say, and everybody lives happily ever after, to have a responsible industry. As part of that process, between IOPSA and the PRB, they offer a lot of training opportunities. I think you are familiar with the COC, the Certificate of Conformance, that the PRB offer, that plumbers can issue as additional, measures, or additional evidence of compliance, and a very, very well planned system to also give confidence to the industry, to the consumers and the bodies that things are being done in a responsible and a safe way. I think one of the big differences between the two bodies to understand is that IOPSA, the Institute of Plumbing South Africa, cater for companies. Companies can become members of IOPSA, where the Plumbing Industry Registration Board is the area where plumber as an individual can be registered, and these needs are addressed more directly. And I realize now there's one thing that I missed in this that I had to explain about this, but that will come to me, and I'll come back to this slide. There's two more bodies to just have a quick discussion. SABS versus JASWIC. I think a discussion that often comes up, especially when people want to verify if a product complies with the standard. A product can be SABS approved, or it can be on the JASWIC list. Now, it's important to also remember that SABS is an organization. You'll note that all the standards are SANS standard. It stands for South African National Standard. The standard belongs to the country, belongs to the people. It does not belong to SABS, the South African Bureau for Standards. the SABS merely facilitates and manages the process of creating the standards and maintaining the standards. SABS also have the operations where they will test products and certify products, apply the SABS approved mark on the product. And that is the important thing to understand. If a product is SABS approved, it means that the product has been tested and the manufacturing process has been verified, which gives confidence that the product will always comply to the requirements, that it's not just a one golden sample that was tested and complied one day sometime in the past. While JASWIC must be seen as is a listing scheme. In other words, JASWIC, if a product is SABS approved, it can be listed on the JASWIC scheme as is. But additional products can also be listed. Now, as part of the JASWIC scheme, such a product requires evidence that it complied. In other words, a test report that shows this product has been tested and it was proved to comply with the requirement. JASWIC does not verify ongoing conformance. In other words, it does not verify the production, that the production is always the same. So although it gives a good indication that the product is likely to comply, it is not as thorough as the SABS. But please understand, in no way I'm trying to make it out to be subject or for lower value than SABS. It's merely a different function. And we're trying to explain the different function between the two organizations. Good. Then let's look at some standards. What are the standards that you need to be aware of? If we talk about hot water installation specifically, which standards are applicable? And which standards do you actually need to know? So let's start at 10252 again. That is the installation, the standard for installation of hot water systems. Well, actually plumbing systems, not only hot water. SANS 10252, it's got a specific requirement, as I've mentioned earlier, that says all geysers, when a geyser is installed, it must comply with SANS 10254. Okay, with that standard. Now, both of these standards, 10252 and 10254, has got various requirements that list specific products that needs to be complied with. For instance, safety valves, SANS 198. There's a variety of safety valves, and both standards require that they must comply with the national standard. Geysers, SANS 151. Drip trays, SANS 1848. Now, if you go through the rest of these seminars with us, the other sessions, we will touch on these standards in some more detail to give a better understanding of what these standards are, how they integrate, why they're supposed to be, and how they really fit into the greater scheme of things, into the hot water installation. It's also very important to understand at this stage again that compliance to a standard doesn't mean I can comply to 10254, but I have not installed a geyser that is 151 compliant. Remember that I explained to you earlier. Compliance to a standard means 100% compliance, and because all of these standards are linked, it's a system. It's a combined compliance. Everything needs to be addressed. Everything needs to be looked at, and they need to comply together to make up one single compliant installation. Okay, now to give you just a brief overview of SANS 10254. Again, my words, not formally out of the standard. I can explain this to you, but let me first take one step back. There's another poll that we need to do. Have a look at. Lee, if you can bring up that poll, please. The question we're asking is, do you have a copy of SANS 10254? And the possible answers: yes, it's always with me. Or yes, I keep it in my office. No, I do installations as I was taught. And 4, no, I've never seen a copy of the standard. So if you can answer those polls, that poll, and let's see what the results are.
Great, so we're up to 79%. And 95%. Okay, great. Good, guys. We got 100% people voting. Well done. Okay. Right, I'm going to close it off now and give it a share there. So if Herman, just go and look at your audience view screen. You see the spread?
Audience view.
The one right at the top.
There you go. I see it. I can see it now. It's very small.
There you go.
Okay. There we have, well, I can't see the percentages, but most of you selected too. Yes, I keep it in my office.
Yeah, so between the top and the bottom, that was the most. 32% for it's always with me. I keep it in my office, 58%. And then the 2 low ones is no.
No. Okay, very interesting. So I have to ask a question.
Steve does ask, he makes a statement and he asks if he says that a key point is that do they have the up-to-date standards?
That is very...
For those guys, yeah, and sorry, and for the guys who don't have the standards, right, you can get them from SABS, go directly to them, or go to the Institute of Plumbing. They do have it there. We've actually put together a nice little booklet that actually breaks those standards down. It was actually put together by our presenter who's with you. And I'm sure he was going to tell you that.
Of course I was going to tell him that. And at this stage, let me be frank. I've been working with standards for more than 20 years. A big part of what I've been doing was verifying compliance to standards. And just a straight answer. If I will not even try to verify a standard if it's not right next to me. I mean, something like 10254 up to today, there's no way I can leave that in my office and go out and actually making sure that it's 100% there. I would always encourage making sure that you have it handy, that you have it with you as a practical reference guide. Okay. Let's quickly again, okay, my short interpretation or my short overview of what is in 10254. It explains it explains how to install a geyser so that it functions effectively. As you can read, I don't even have to say it, you can read that on your screen, but making sure it looks at the function, making sure that it's a safe installation, that the consumer will get what he expects, as the Consumer Protection Act requires us to do, that the consumer will know how to use the product, which is a critical part. And even future maintenance is addressed in the standard. And a key aspect right at the bottom, it is not only to make sure that the installation that you do is fine now, it must be fine for the full life of the installation, which basically means almost forever. If I can just get control over my, there it is. I can go to the next slide. So if you look at the actual headings in the standard itself, let me give you a brief overview and just explain what is in that. And again, a lot of this information, as we go through the rest of this series, we'll delve deeper into this and make a little bit more sense out of this. When you look at the standard, let's look at the scope first. And that is in many standards that's such an important part. To make sure that you read the right standard for the product. It will define what product, let's say what products are covered by a standard. For instance, SANS 151, if I remember correctly, it specifies that it's only for geysers up to 450 liter, if I remember correctly. So I've seen people come along with a tank of 600 liter, and in that case, it just doesn't fall within the scope of the standard doesn't apply to that product. The second heading in the standard always is the normative references. Simple list, everybody page over that, but it's an important list of all the standards that are referred to in this document. Basically says it will give you a list. TAPS, this standard. Make sure you have a copy of that. So if you go to SANS 10254, it's always a practical idea to go to the normative references and make sure that you have a copy of all the standards that's referred in there as well. Okay, it's true, you don't always have to have a full copy, but make sure you're familiar with that. And sometimes out of that is some practical standards to get. If I can use an example, for instance, a tap, you don't need to know what's all the requirements of the tap. You just need to verify that the tap complies to the standard. But at least from that list, you will know which standard it needs to comply with so that you can verify that. We talk about the definitions. Often definitions can be confusing. When I use a word, you might have a different understanding of what I'm trying to say. But the standards always carries a list of definitions. So it often happens with us. If you verify something and you're not sure if the terminology used in the standard, you first go to the definition, see if that terminology isn't specifically defined. And that will often help you make a lot of sense of the weird requirements. Then
Herman, can I just quickly
yes,
Herman, I want to just quickly interject here. We're coming up to 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Guys, are you happy just to go over time a little bit? Just raise your hands. Okay, good. Because I've got a few questions here and I will answer them as I get to the end. Great. Everybody's happy.
Okay.
If you can't, please, I'm more than happy to leave, guys. You'll get the recording later and you can catch up on the recording. Thanks, Herman.
Okay, great. I will move over the rest a little bit faster, so please stop me if there's anything I pass over too quickly. Okay, so we go back to this general assembly purposes, operation of the system. That is, in my view, the technical requirements, the practical instructions, what must be, what should not be there. Installation details, I swap those two around. General assembly talks about, as I said, the purpose, the overall requirements for the system, while the section on installation details gets specific. It will address a specific component. Vacuum breaker, how do you fit the vacuum breaker? What do you need to address? Drip tray, what is the detailed requirements for the drip trays and so on. And then it's important to understand that there's an annexure, energy saving considerations. That is not a direct requirement in the standard. In other words, you can choose to comply with this or not, but it is very, very practical guidelines to ensure, well, energy efficiency, to improve energy efficiency. And we all know how important that is in our country lately. So, a quick overview, what to expect from the rest of the series. I think one of the important things to expect is we will look at specific layouts, basic layout, various installation layouts that the standards specify for different type of environments. The standard addresses closed system, unvented systems, vented type, system type geysers, system fed geysers, open outlet types. All of that is addressed in the standard. There's specific requirements on drip trays and water discharge, something that is easily overlooked. A drip tray is we all know to use a drip tray, but there's important requirements for where does the water go that runs from the drip tray and from other components that might release or discharge water around the building. We've addressed the energy efficiency. There's some of the requirements talk specifically about mandatory requirements like the installation, what it should be, how it should be, and as I said, the annex gives some guidance on practical improvements. Then the next session, and one of the interesting sessions for me, is the dynamics of hot water. If we look at some basic physics, which will make you understand why are all these requirements in the standard? Where does it come from? Are we over-exaggerating things, or are there a need for that? So we look at some of the basic physics of hot water, so that the rest of the sessions will make sense as well. So what's the conclusion? What did we learn today? Standards are valuable because it helps you to do the job right first time. And I think the important message, and I think that's probably the most important message to remember. Standards protect you, provided that you do the job right. It's all about the document is there. We know that it has to be complied with. It's not really a choice. And if you comply with it, it will protect you. It will safeguard you. It will cover your blind spot. And at this stage, are there any further questions?
Great, Herman, we got a few questions, but before I get on to this one, that last slide, I think that's very important that you said that, you know, standards are there to protect you. You know, if anything goes wrong, you can say, I installed it to the standard, there it is, I installed it on it, because, you know, a lot of times everybody blames us as plumbers and says, well, you're wrong. As long as you can just turn around and say, I was told to do it like this, or the manufacturer's booklet said I need to do it like this, so therefore I installed it. So you can't hold me accountable for that specific process. And it's critical. Stick to the standard. Do what the standard says, and I guarantee you guys, you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong at the end of the day.
Totally agree with you, Lee. Let me just switch on my camera also for a change. I forgot to wave at you at the beginning. Hello there, everybody. Just so you see, I'm also a real person. So, Lee, are there any questions?
Yes, great, Herman. There's a few. I mean, not be difficult. I've been answering it. I'm just going to go through some of the things. Ryan indicated, why do suppliers sell geysers to unqualified people if SANS 10254 stipulates that it must be installed by a qualified plumber? Okay, SANS 1025 doesn't stipulate that, Ryan. It is 1010, it's 10400, which is the National Building Regulations. But you remember in the discussion, Herman did indicate that they're all linked somewhere along the line. And it was more of a statement that Ryan's made. He says, well, we should rather be selling it to qualified people. We are working towards that specific direction, but you must remember that the manufacturers look at it differently. I mean, and no disrespect to the manufacturers, but what the manufacturers do is that they must always balance between they're trying to do sales versus the industry and trying to get the industry right, or trying to uplift the industry. So, but we're getting that balance, and there's a big thing coming soon at the end, in the next 2 to 3 months. Guys, watch out for that. And if you attend the New Era session next week for the PRRB, you can actually see that we will be talking a little bit about the changes that are going to be happening in the industry. That is a free PRRB course there. Herman, I know I'm not asking you specifically the questions because I can't answer them if you're happy with that. Okay, yeah,
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, so here comes one from Francois, which kind of leads on with Ryan said. He says the retailer can not be responsible if a product has been installed incorrectly by the installer. For example, and he uses the PRV, which is leaking as a result of unbalanced pressure. You're 100%, Francois, but then the question would be for me is to ask the retailer, why did he sell it to an unqualified person? Because now he can't point a finger anywhere else. He sold it to a person who is not qualified. He goes and installs it. Did that retailer know the guy was unqualified? So if you knew that it was unqualified, and let's use an example. Let's say that you sell it, the retailer sells it to a PRRB installer. He now can point his finger and said, that PRRB installer, I sold it to him. He was a competent person, so you can't hold me accountable for that specific thing. I don't know if you agree with me on that specific one, Herman.
I forgot I must switch on my mic first.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I definitely agree with you there.
Yes, okay, great. Then Annie in Cape Town, I think it's pronounced Annie. If I'm saying it incorrect, I do apologize. She did offering ask in Afrikaans, and I read through it, and I'm not going to attempt to try and read it. But what she's saying is that in specifically Cape Town, they have a certificate of compliance in Cape Town on a sale of a property, right? And what she's asking is saying that in this certificate, and I'm not too sure of the date, she says 2006, came in 2006. Why should the installation be made correct if that law only came in 2006? Why should the installation now be corrected going forward? My response to that is, Annie, I'm not too sure about the Cape Town regulations if they require you to fix it up prior to 2006, but if, Steve, I can't remember the date in which 10254 came in, the regulation, but anything post that when that regulation came in didn't have to be corrected, because you can't change a law and then enforce the law retrospectively. You've got to force it going forward. So if an installation was replaced going forward, you have to have the installation upgraded. I don't know if that answers your question. So anything post 2006, it shouldn't be the case. Again, the Cape Town might be a little bit more sticky about that specific one. I can't comment on that.
I can just add to that. Yes. One. It is true that in normal legal terms, a new legislation can't be made activated retrospectively. There are certain cases where that can be done, but as you say, if the installation was prior to 2000 and you do some work on the installation after that, then you have to ensure. I mean, that brings it into the new time period. So you can't work on the old installation and still expect it to comply only to the old legislation. Then it has to comply to all the new requirements.
Okay, great. Steve indicated 2001. Thanks, Steve. So 2001, the SANS 10254 became a compliant regulation. You had to do it. So after 2001, but anything retrospectively, you can't force it on people. Thanks, Steve. Okay, then there's a couple of comments about, Colin specifically was talking more about the tee-off from geyser, unbalanced pressure. You know, he says he rocks up at a geyser that's 19. I know we're getting into a little bit more detail now, guys. We're going to address this at a later course. But the point that I want, maybe just one point that I want to make at this particular, a lot of the questions are asking about that specific one. In the standard 10254, and you guys have that. So go back to your office tomorrow and go back to your standard. And go and remember this clause. It's the most important clause because it will protect you going forward. It talks about non-compliant installations. In other words, you get to an installation and you see that it's unbalanced pressure. The standard says it must be balanced pressure. Now, if you're doing an insurance claim, who is going to pay for correcting that unbalanced pressure? It's not going to be the insurance. It's definitely not going to be you. So it's the homeowner's responsibility. Do you think the homeowner is going to pay for that installation? They're not. So therefore, you as a plumber, now this, guys, what I'm saying here, please apply. As a plumber, you need to notify the homeowner of non-compliance on that installation before you do the installation. So if anything goes wrong and the non-ret or the geyser bursts because of unbalanced pressure or whatever it is, and they come back to you or the manufacturer or the insurances or the homeowner, and they come back to you and say, you are responsible because you should have balanced the pressure. You can just turn around and say, Mrs. Jones, I notified you, the homeowner or the user, Steve corrected me, the homeowner or the user, of non-compliance. So therefore, you cannot hold me accountable for that. And the Institute of Plumbing has that document. If you go to their website, I think as a member, you can download that specific one, but that document is available to indicate, to help you indicate to the homeowner of non-compliance. And that non-compliance, guys, if you go and read the standard, it says it has to be in writing, not verbally, in writing. And again, it's to protect you as the plumber. Okay, guys, I think that's most of the questions that we covered there. I know there was a couple of questions, but I think it falls, we will answer these ones going forward. And again, I say, guys, hey, non-compliance, notified in home, it protects you all the way. Great. Okay, Herman. That's us for now. There's no more questions. So,
thank you, and I see you all on the 27th for the next session when we address the properties of hot water. Have a nice evening.
Good.
Goodbye.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Remember that the recordings will be sent out, and also that you will get a assessment. It's a nice little assessment just to see if you know what you do. Before you do the assessment, quickly run through the recording again. Have a look at it. That's number one. And then, guys, we're going to switch. You know, when we close the session, please, there is a quick survey that we ask you to complete. There is a prize at the end of the course, the total end of the course. If you have answered all the surveys throughout the duration of the course, HeatTech has sponsored a 10-liter underbasin geyser for the people, and we will do a lucky draw as long as you have answered all the survey questions. And with that said, I just want to thank again HeatTech for making this possible and making the series possible. Thank you, thank you. And to everybody that has attended the course, great, thank you very much. I hope that you learned something great on this course. And guys, going forward, we're going to learn some great stuff. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.